Good evening, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for the February 18th primary election. Candidates for Wisconsin Rapids City Mayor and District 2 Alderpersons will be featured in tonight's forum. My name is Gloria Kubishak. I'm representing the League of Women Voters and will be your moderator tonight. We're pleased to bring you this live broadcast in Wisconsin Rapids Community from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media Television. Our viewing audience can call in their questions at 423-0445, and that is right on the television screen. The League thanks the candidates for their willingness to run for office, and we would remind you that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not in any way endorse candidates or a political party. The candidates for Wisconsin Rapids Mayor are incumbent Zach Ruink, Shane Blazer, and Patrick Delaney. Earlier this evening, the candidates drew for order of speaking. Each of them will be given 2 minutes in which to give opening remarks, closing remarks, and answer the questions. Written questions from the studio audience will be screened for duplication. At the same time, we caution you to make sure your questions pertain to issues and not personalities. At this point, we will begin with opening statements, and that means we will go to our first speaker, and I lost my list here, and that is our incumbent, Zach Ruink.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. Though with one less passionate and inspirational member of the League, Yvonne Ellie, who passed away in November, I always look forward to seeing her cheery face at these, but I know she's in spirit with us tonight. I first ran for mayor because I saw tremendous potential for our community, our stronger economy, a more exciting and community places, and a city who is more connected to people and the world around us. A successful economic development strategy requires vision and focus. The city is promoting itself to developers and site selectors, is acting to remove barriers to redevelopment like readying property for reuse. Our efforts are paying off. We're breaking recent records of economic expansion and investment. We landed the largest new investment in 2 decades, Metalco, who is constructing an $80 million aluminum plant in our East Industrial Park and will initially create 80 jobs. Small businesses are taking vacant and underutilized properties and redeveloping them from West Grand Avenue to A Street and places in between. Our unemployment rate has been cut in half and incomes are no longer declining. We're working to meet unmet demand for workers by adding housing options across our city. Our tax base has grown each year and our property values are higher. To maintain a safe community during my office, I've prioritized investments in public safety, added additional police officers and firefighters, along with the modern equipment necessary for them to do their difficult jobs with the goal that they return safely at home after their shifts. I'm proud that we've been able to do this, all by keeping the amount we levy in property taxes flat over time. This is all great when looking backwards, but how about forward? I continue to believe the challenges we face are serious but solvable. We don't receive enough state aid to fix our roads and replace them, but I'm proud to be your voice in telling our story to the governor and legislature. Our local retail shopping options are getting narrower as trends continue to shift online. And as your mayor, I look forward to discussing all of these issues and the many more this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach Ruink. Patrick Delaney.
I'd like to start off by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, the audience, and as well as those joining us by television. I'm Patrick Delaney. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my family and our history to Wisconsin Rapids. Helping the elderly and disabled is long run in my family. In the 1970s, my grandmother opened up her own home to take care of veterans. She would later own and operate what is today called the Delaney Home in Pittsville. In the late 1980s, my grandmother would build a home on Pepper Avenue in Wisconsin Rapids, which was built especially for the purpose of caring for the elderly. This facility has been sold to Hilltop and currently takes care of dementia residents, and from everything I've heard, they do a fantastic job. In October of 2000, my mom purchased a separate home and started what is today called Best Place to Be. To continue to care for the elderly, but also to expand and help those with mental and physical disabilities. I currently own and operate Best Place to Be, and we're always looking for talented, caring employees to work with us to help those that are that need help. So I have a few questions. Why has our local population not grown in the last 50 years? Why do businesses not flock to Wisconsin Rapids to expand, build, or even start their companies here? How can a town just a few miles away provide their citizens with low-cost utilities and, especially in the case of water, for less than half of what we charge here in Wisconsin Rapids? Why has our government spending more than doubled in just 8 years? And that's my time.
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Thank you, Gloria. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight, to the Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for sharing this event with those watching at home, and to those here in the audience and watching at home for taking time to participate. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Shane Blazer. My wife, Kelly, and I have been married for 20 years. Together we have a daughter who's 16 and a son who is 12. I grew up in Wisconsin Rapids, graduated from Lincoln High School. My involvement and passions for this city started and grew with my family, career, and expanded as a business owner and my continued involvement in public service. I obtained my degree from University of Wisconsin-Platteville, worked as a police officer and the city clerk in Wisconsin Rapids. I've started and I currently operate 3 small businesses. Finally, I represent District 8 on the City Council, where as a team, we continue to work collectively to further this community. Now I want to take my next step in my goal in serving this community. I don't want to have the job of mayor, I want to do the job of mayor. By advancing a collective effort for a common good for our city, which include bringing business owners to the table to discuss how we can support and assist in helping to invest in our community, fostering positive working relationships within the city, working with local community leaders and city organizations to ensure they have the support in their efforts, and working with citizens to ensure the city is providing the service needed in our community in a collaborative and supportive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. We'll start with you, Patrick Delaney, on the first question. Wisconsin Rapids seems to be undersupplied when it comes to retail shopping. Do you agree, and what will you do as mayor to improve the situation?
Okay. My biggest platform is that we need to decrease the property tax. The property taxes here in Wisconsin Rapids are higher than 97% of Wisconsin. We are 40th out of 1,852 municipalities. We're right at the top. And my last question was, why does Wisconsin Rapids have such high taxes? Now, it's not just the mayor over the past 8 years, even though spending has really gotten out of control over the past 8 years. But it's also the past mayors for the past 50 years and the city councils. So, although I would agree that we don't have enough retail here in the town, I think that if we develop an environment with low taxes, low utility costs, that we will be able to get more people here.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Thank you. I also agree, and I grew up here. I've seen retail. I've seen what I thought we were kind of peaking out, and retail has left. And I think part of the problem and part of the issue is that at a city level, I think we need to focus and develop, or actually have a person. And it's been many years since we've actually had somebody do economic development. And I believe that we need to have somebody on staff that's sole responsibility is for economic development and to work on those. But I wholeheartedly believe with our city council that we currently have is that if there was retail that was interested in being within our city, we would support anything that we could do to help them make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. Zach Verwink.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we also have to be a bit realistic in our the market realities with attracting and retaining retailers, brick and mortar retailers. I think it requires a dual approach. First, supporting the local businesses and promoting the local interests, because those are the folks that are investing in the booster clubs and the sporting groups in the community, and certainly hiring local people. At the same time, we recognize that quality of life is impacted positively by having good, sound retail options. And prior to Shopko's closure and their demise, I had reached out to Target, again, probably the 6th time that I have since becoming mayor. And their answer, unfortunately, was still the same. They weren't interested in entering this market, but they would continue to keep their eye on this market. So since that time, I continue to hold monthly calls with the owners of both the former Shopko store as well as what I'll refer to as the original Staples store. And both of those individuals, the groups that are representing those properties now, are actively working with leads, along with us at City Hall, to try to attract retailers that are right-sized for our community, that aren't going to enter this market without really a sound idea of a business plan that will be supported in our region. So I'm real excited that I think over the course of this year, one of those 2 retailer or vacant spaces will be occupied, and I believe that strongly because of our efforts in part to continue to raise awareness that this community is underserved when it comes to retail, and certainly from a development standpoint that the developers, the owners of those properties, are willing to make deals to support the community's efforts to grow retail in this community.
Thank you, Zach Verwink. Shane, we'll start with you on this question. Is there anything city officials can do to get owners of abandoned property to razz or otherwise take responsibility for their empty buildings after a certain amount of time?
Currently, the city council, we have a nuisance ordinance. We have a nuisance ordinance officer, and I know they work at that, but most of the time when a building gets raised in a community, it's because it ends up on back taxes, and then eventually the county ends up owning it. And lately, the buildings that have been raised by the county. So yeah, I think it goes back to our ordinance control officers and our police department to continue to work on holding building owners and property owners accountable for their properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Zach Verwink.
I'm really concerned about the preponderance of vacant properties in our community, particularly because they become not only nuisance properties, but also public safety concerns for vandalism, break-in, folks working out of those properties when they're not allowed to be there. I think, but it's almost too late when the city steps into a nuisance property, because then they do need to be raised and they become a burden on city resources. And in our case, as mayor, we've worked to make sure we keep an accurate and up-to-date listing of the contact information of these properties. Many of these properties are not owned locally, and if they are, those individuals are hard to sometimes reach, or maybe don't have the financial resources to continue to maintain them, and then they end up on back taxes. So for us, it's continuing to stay in contact with those vacancies and to figure out what their plans are. If we have a better idea of what their long-term interest with the property, if it's a simple hold or if they plan to reinvest in it, we have a better understanding of how much early action or leverage we have into continuing to make sure that those don't become a nuisance or a negative drain when it comes to public safety resources, et cetera. But I think at the same time, we also have to offer a partnership and help support them if they're looking to sell the property. Oftentimes we hear about business owners or investors looking to take on projects, and sometimes they don't know where to begin to reach some of these folks that have ownership that are in holding companies that if you were to run a Google search on a particular property, you may never get their contact information. So sometimes it's hard to track these folks down, but it's really important for the city to stay on top of it before these issues really become a drain on city resources.
Thank you, Zach Verwink. Patrick Delaney.
There's nothing that you guys have said that I disagree with, so I don't have anything to add to this.
Thank you. Zach, we'll start with you on this question. As our city's mayor, how would you address turnover? Would you favor creation, and by turnover, going forward with executive staff? Would you favor creation of a city manager or a city administrator for our city?
Seems to be the age-old question for our city and many cities that are set up under the same structure which many cities in the state were founded, and that's to have a strong mayor-council form of government. I do think the issue warrants ongoing conversation and review. I think it's ultimately up to the residents to make that decision. Currently, the model is to have a strong mayor form of government, and I honor it. I respect the model that we have, certainly as the incumbent. I think it serves our city well, but I think there are opportunities to continue to review it and compare and contrast the pros and cons. And at the time at which the city wishes to make that change, certainly can be done by a charter ordinance at the city council level, requiring a supermajority of those that serve on the council. But again, it's not for me as the mayor to say that this should be the model that serves our city, because this is the model that has served our city well for 22 administrations now, or over the course of well over 100 years. So I would encourage those that do have passion about discussing this issue to continue to raise the space and the points on our agendas at city council meetings, and maybe to have a working group review and consider the topic. But at this point in time, it's serving our community well, and I think until the evidence is proven otherwise, we should continue to operate under the model we have.
Thank you, Zach Verwing. Patrick Delaney.
I don't think that we need to be adding any more positions per se. If there is a way that we can combine positions, that may be the route to go. I think the best thing to do is to take a look at other communities and see where they're at and how they're serving their people. We have a town just a few miles away that has, we're 43% higher in property taxes than they are. And as like I said before, our water costs are more than double theirs. Well, who owns the water here in town? Who owns the waterworks and lighting? Well, it's the citizens. So why is it that ours are so much more expensive than one just a little bit away? So I don't agree with adding any more positions. When you add people, it's very hard to get rid of them. I think that our government now is very inefficient. Since 2011 to the 2019 budget, the total budget went from $24 million to $56 million. The mayoral position cost $117,000 in 2011, went up to 2018, $197,170. Finance department has gone up from $254,215 to $453,064. Information technology has gone up $105,000 to $368,000. And I just think that is ridiculous. We need to look at other communities. We don't need to rebuild the wheel or reinvent the wheel. Let's look at them as to how to better serve our citizens.
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Did you, was there a part of a question there on turnover, did I hear?
Yeah,
Or-
it says, as our city's CEO, how would you address turnover in parentheses going forward with our executive staff? Would you favor creation of a city manager or a city administrator for our city?
Well, the council and staff has taken on addressing, I think, some of the turnover issues through surveys. And I think that's a good start. And I think we need to continue that. Unfortunately, right now, we're absent of a human resource director. So as chairman of the Human Resource Committee, I've been in favor of waiting till we hire somebody internally to replace that position to address any potential turnover or any of those type of needs. But as for an administrator manager type position, I believe Marshfield runs with an administrator and their mayor's half-time. That's one form. The other form, the manager, which if we'd ever look at changing, I'd be in favor of the manager type position. That's where you end up basically eliminating the mayor. You hire a full-time manager to operate the administrative end of the city, and then the city council would still handle legislative end. So if we ever looked at doing one or the other, I'd be more in favor of the manager type position. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. Patrick, we will start with you on this next question. What will you do to improve transportation system and infrastructure in our city in energy efficient ways?
I actually have a quote here from the mayor during the 2019 budget commentary. Oh, nope, sorry. Wrong spot. December 10th, Finance and Property meeting. When speaking of special assessments, Mayor Vrewink says, the city of Kaukauna has implemented a utility fee basically on their utility bills to help pay for infrastructure and transportation. At the end of the day, nobody is going to get out of paying for it. Again, I think what we need to do is look for ways that we can better serve the community and in a more efficient way and cost-effective way. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Thank you, Gloria. This year is unique at the budget time because we have a lot of carryover funds from last year due to the storm. So this year our budgets are bigger. Well, the carryover money from last year is being added to the money this year to work on road improvements, and I believe that's should be a priority. We all drive around here. We all know the potholes, and I think focusing on our infrastructure, such as our roads, and continuing to do what we're doing now, and if we can allocate more funds towards road improvement, I think it'd benefit our citizens.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. Zach Verwink.
The question, I think, was speaking to how are we going to improve our transportation infrastructure in energy efficient ways. And I think one of the things I'm real proud of is that our city has prioritized the fact that there are alternative modes that people get from point A to point B. They're on bike, they're on foot. They may take one of our rideshare programs with the River City's taxi cab service. They may own their own vehicle. And I think for us, it's been recognizing that people are in search of different destinations. They might be living closer to where they work, and therefore they may be carless. I think it's probably impossible to be carless in this town, but I know there are people that are. And I think for us, it's been adding bike lanes and promoting alternative modes of transportation, and for people to get there safely. That in neighborhood, sidewalks are very challenging. I always joke on the city council, it's one of the most divisive issues I think we encounter, and I think it's important for us to continue to promote the fact that people are taking sometimes a motorized scooter to get to shopping, or they might be going to visit family or friends or out to dinner in non-motorized ways through a vehicle. And we have to continue to provide safe avenues and venues for people to get there in such fashion. And so I'm proud that we've done that, whether it's identifying bike lanes and bike routes, whether it's adding additional sidewalks in neighborhoods where seniors and elderly may be getting to services, maybe they're going to day services. It might be for students to get to school, to and from school safely. But I think we also have to keep in mind the world is a changing place, and the emphasis and the priority that the car is having is evolving. And I continue to read a lot about autonomous vehicles. I don't know if they're going to come here very soon, but it's something that from a community planning standpoint we have to be prepared for, and we have to be ready to adapt when those things come to our communities, because I do think a community that's welcoming and that's attractive and that's modern continues to make sure that and recognize that people get from point A to point B in different ways than just an automobile themselves.
Thank you, Zach Verwink. Shane, we'll start with you. With the 2020 census and redistricting, do you favor increasing the council to 9 members or another odd number, or keeping it at 8?
I've actually, I tried to champion this issue a couple months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's my request was to create an aldermanic district at an at-large position. So my philosophy or thoughts were that many aldermanic districts have multiple people that might be a good candidate to run. So the at-large position could have included, it would include anybody could run for that position. They wouldn't have any extra I know some of the concern was that it would be but I think they said a junior mayor position because it was an at-large position, but that person wouldn't have any additional authority over any other alderman. So yeah, I still favor that, and once the census does come about, and if I'm still around, I will support and hope that we pursue at least creating that 9th district, because at that time when we do the census, we're able to redistrict, create the 9 districts, and then we would have that odd number. Because unfortunately, and whether or not people believe that the mayor should legislate or not, sometimes it's a responsibility of the position. But lately, it seems like the mayor ends up having to break a lot of ties, and hopefully with a 9th odd alderman, that would take some of that legislative responsibility out of the mayor's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Zach?
I do think it'd be an opportune time to make any changes, and I was interested to hear the 9th proposal, the 9th aldermanic proposal, because it certainly would change the dynamics in which the city council operates today. And I think whether it's 9 or there was a proposal on the table for 11 or maybe even 10, I think those things need to be evaluated. As the mayor, I operate in which the rules the council sets, so I really don't have a strong opinion. Again, it's the system we currently operate in, and I think it serves us well, but I do think there are merits to considering either enlarging the council to offer larger districts, or smaller districts, so you add more interested individuals. We're all in a small community, and sometimes you don't necessarily want to challenge your neighbor if you think that they're doing an adequate job on the city council or not, and it would promote more discussion and more dialogue. So I think more conversation can be warranted, but I don't have a strong opinion one way for or against the 9th aldermanic, or adding going to a 10th member or even 11th member in the future. I think our community is served well by the council size that we have. We have a number of districts that are uncontested every year, so even that sometimes it's hard to get people to run for local office, and so anything that can add more people to the equation and possibly shift the legislative decision making away from the administrator or the CEO of the city could serve us well as well.
Thank you, Zach Verwing. Patrick Delaney?
I'm a state certified and licensed assessor, so I've worked with a lot of communities in central Wisconsin. My question is, why do we have alderman districts? Can't we just get 9 people, or how many ever people run, pick the top 9, then have the highest votes and go with them? I think we're a small enough community where we all look out for each other, and I don't think anybody would get left behind. That would be my proposal, is just to do away with the districts altogether.
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. Zach Verwing. Next question. What is your stance on borrowing for projects?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it's the state of affairs in Wisconsin that cities and villages like ours, and counties for that matter, don't have the ability to levy for improvements. And so therefore, the only option if we're going to build a road or buy a large piece of equipment is either to reduce our budget, when the majority of our budget is people, so we would have to lay off a large number of people, or cut services in lieu of actually accomplishing a major spending priority. And so I think it requires a disciplined approach. I think in my time, we've borrowed for projects, but I find that we don't always have the luxury of deciding exactly when we want to do these things. We replaced the river crossing, which is the effluent wastewater line from the west side of the river to the east, and we don't have the luxury of waiting for that thing to fail, right? There was a significant cost associated with that project, but if that thing failed on any given day, Ocean Spray or all the manufacturers on the west side of our city would have to stop production. All of the residents, all of that effluent, wastewater effluent, would have to be moved by truck to the east side of the river. So projects like that, you have to really plan for. And sometimes it requires borrowing initiatives such as that project. So we had to borrow against the wastewater utilities for revenue bonds to be able to afford those improvements. Another case in point is investing for roads that, as I mentioned, because of the fiscal constraints in which cities have to operate within, we don't have the luxury of just levying for those and raising property taxes. We have to borrow for them. So as it relates to even our electrical infrastructure, it's really important that we maintain a reliable and sound electrical infrastructure, and we've done that by way of borrowing because the utility can't. It's got a large enough system where it can't just do incremental improvements. It has to do large-scale improvements and capital investments over long periods of time, and that requires borrowing. The benefit of borrowing in this environment is it's historically low interest rates. So our cost to borrow is significantly less than in the city's history when borrowing was far less attractive for obvious reasons because it was that much more costly.
Thank you, Zach Fruing. Patrick Delaney.
I don't know if you caught what he had just said there, but 3 times he said, because of state-imposed levy limits. This is something that was passed by Governor Walker, and so what he's complaining about is that he can't raise your taxes higher to be able to spend more of your money. I just think that's crazy. I could see if we were one of the lowest tax citizens in the state, but being in the top 97 or the top 3%, which means 97% of all of Wisconsin pays less taxes than we do here in Wisconsin Rapids. I find that to be nuts. And so now we're talking about taking out loans so our kids and our grandkids can pay for it. I don't find that responsible.
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Thank you. I have concern with borrowing. I do agree that borrowing for road improvements is responsible because most of the time when you borrow for a road, that road's going to long live out the life of the loan. So, and that's the only way we can really start to improve our infrastructure. My concern comes in when we're borrowing for like the aquatic center or for the riverfront. Hopefully things will go better, but if things go as potentially as it's laid out, we'll have over $9 million in borrowing for the aquatic center, $2.5 million for the riverfront, and that's over 20 years. But I do believe it's responsible for us so we can improve our infrastructure to borrow for those type of improvements because it's going to outlive the life of the loan versus the other projects because those create other expenses through maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. Patrick, we'll start with you. What do you think are the two most important issues facing the city?
Oh, I've already talked about this many times. It's our high property taxes and our water bill is ridiculous. I've worked with a lot of other communities, and I would say that the best communities are those that they have a budget that is not in the negative. Also, they have lower taxes. There's so many good things that you could talk about. Some municipalities, when you go to talk with them about starting a business or something, they can get that through from 2 to 6 weeks. And just as a citizen of Wisconsin Rapids, it seems like for years we've been chasing businesses out instead of welcoming them in. And now that the mill is not doing as good as it used to, and it's been changing hands, now we're on the flip side where we're trying to get more people in, but our taxes are too high, our utilities are too high.
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. Shane Blazer.
Thank you. Two of the biggest was the challenges facing the city. One, I believe, a challenge being, and a concern of mine is the maintenance of all the new projects that we have done through the riverfront, and there's so many unknowns with the aquatic center. The expense of maintaining that, the expenses of future expenses that could incur, and also another one is my biggest concern or challenge is going back to what I said before about economic development. We have nobody dedicated solely in the city or in any other organization no longer that's dedicated strictly to economic development. And the only way we're going to work on retail and work on business is having somebody making those contacts and trying to develop leads. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Zach Verwink.
Two of the most pressing challenges I think our city faces today, one is housing. We have employers that tell me every day that if they had places for their people to live, they would have no issue filling the vacant positions that they have today. And so I think, the city is taking good steps and making strides in a positive direction in this regard. One, it adds tax base. Two, it adds residents. And when you add residents, you add income. And when you add income, you can get to the retail and some of the other aspirations that we have, or the cost issues that Patrick has raised. The other issue is just economic development in general, that our economy is not as diverse as a lot of successful and thriving economies in cities our size. And that's not our fault. In fact, we were blessed to have a real strong industry that carried this community, but it continues to concern me that we don't have a real diverse economy, and it's incumbent upon the city, it's incumbent upon all the community organizations that help the city with economic development effort to continue to diversify the local economy, to add business and to grow business in different sectors. I think as it relates to economic development is the educational attainment of our residents, that many communities that are really having great success in attracting and growing employers are those with being able to attract and retain residents that have education, post-secondary, and degree attainment beyond what our community has. And that's not a problem, it's just something that we can continue to work toward. And that's incumbent upon us to continue to become an interesting place, a place that's exciting and has the amenities that people of all ages really want and enjoy, as well as the housing options that allow them to live in this community and work here and not have a 30 to 40 minute commute that keeps them from their families, that adds expense to their household budgets. And I think those are the two pressing issues as it relates to our community today.
At this point in time, we're going to move into closing statements. So we will start with you, Shane Blazer.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for holding this event tonight, and to the other candidates for sharing their perspectives. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here this evening. Events like these are important, as you can see from our responses tonight. There are issues and challenges that the city faces right now, and different perspectives on priorities and solutions. There are also things happening through local investment that give us a lot to be proud of. But our success as a city is not going to be complete until it's felt at the local level. And I am optimistic that by bringing a fresh perspective to the office of mayor and the willingness to listen to our citizens, community leaders, we can work collaboratively to tackle the challenges in our city and make sure that our city works for you. I appreciate the conversations we've had tonight, and I ask for your vote for mayor on Tuesday, February 18th, so we can work together to build a city that prospers for you and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane Blazer. Zach Verwink.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for everyone that is attending here tonight and those tuning in from the comforts of their home. As mayor, I'm committed to finishing what I've started. I'm a pro-jobs, pro-business, and pro-development mayor, but not at the expense of neighborhood and our quality of life that we've come to enjoy in our community. And my commitment to you as hardworking taxpayers in this community is to continue to work just as hard as you do to bring business, to support growth, and to continue to make sure our tax base and the residents that choose to live here have an exciting and thriving community that they are proud of and are proud to call home to. I'm not about just bringing jobs to this community, but about bringing careers, ones that they can sustain their family on, ones that they can not worry about who is going to cover their child care needs as they go to work every day. And I think we've made great progress and great strides in this community, and it's not just because of one mayor or just one administration or the city council, but I'm very proud to be working with a team. And I don't think, while we have disagreements at the city council or within city staff, we are all working on the same team. And I'm really proud of the team that we've built, not only with city staff, we all challenge each other, and certainly as a city council and as mayor, continued and very optimistic about our future. And I'm committed to finishing what we started. So it's a real honor and privilege to serve as your mayor, and just know that I'll not stop working until the day I leave office as your mayor. So I ask for your vote on not only February 18th, but on April 7th to continue to be working for our fine city. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach Verwink. Patrick Delaney.
Before you today is a choice for the next mayor of Wisconsin Rapids. On one hand, you have two individuals who are for maintaining high taxes. On the other hand, you have me. The latest data shows Wisconsin Rapids is 40th out of 1,852 municipalities. Wisconsin Rapids has higher taxes than 97% of all Wisconsin, higher than Wausau, Stevens Point, 43% higher than our neighbor Plover. Take a look at your property tax bill and imagine what good things you could do if it were to be cut by 25% or more. What kind of projects around the house could you do with that extra money? What kind of charities could you give even more to? Maybe you rent and you don't think that the tax bill doesn't affect you, but believe me that there is a direct correlation between how much you pay in rent and how ridiculously high our taxes are. According to the city's website, the mayor is responsible for preparing and submitting an annual budget to the council for review and approval. During the November 19th council meeting, when the 2020 budget was presented to the council, there was one dissenter, Alderman Vernon Virginski, who stated, quote, "Over the last 10 years, I've been watching what has been happening on the council, and I think we keep pushing more and more cost on the property owner in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, and they're getting less and less service. I know in my particular area of the city, we have a lot of senior citizens. Some of them don't have cars. Some of them are single people trying to stay in their own homes. They're living on Social Security and their taxes go up." He continues, "They pay more fees, they pay more taxes, and there's always something more being added to the cost of living." He ends by saying, "I feel that we just can't keep going this way. I can't support even a $2 increase," end of quote. Only 2 council members voted against a tax increase. Mr. Blazer was not one of them. He voted for the increase. So you have a mayor who proposes tax increases and a council member who sees no problem in voting for the increase. Do you think if either of these two are elected, they will lower your taxes?
Thank you, Patrick Delaney. And thanks to all of our candidates who are willing to run for public office. This concludes the first part of our voter forum. And I just want to remind everybody, be sure to vote in the primary election on February 18th. Thank you all.
Now you need a photo ID to vote.
You probably already have one. If not,
Get your free Wisconsin State ID at the Division of Motor Vehicles.
You can use your certified birth certificate, a pay stub, and your social security card. See the complete list of documents you can use at bringit.wisconsin.gov.
Welcome to the second part of tonight's League of Women Voters Candidate Forum. In this part of the forum, we will be featuring candidates for District 2 Alderman seats, and those candidates include Carolyn Peterson Martin, Dean Veneman, and Vern Virginski. We will begin with opening statements. All of the candidates drew for order of speaking. They will have 2 minutes for those opening statements, 2 minutes to answer questions, and 2 minutes for closing statements. Our viewing audience can call in questions at 423-0445. I am Gloria Kubishak. I will be your moderator for this section of the debate. And we thank our candidates for being willing to run for public office. We will start with opening statements, and Carolyn, you will be first.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity tonight. My name is Carolyn Peterson Martin. I am a 37-year resident of the city. I was born, my children have been born here. My husband and I both work in the community, and we are raising our children here. We want to continue to have our children grow in this beautiful city that we currently live in, and we want them to be able to have the opportunity going forward to go to college and want to come back to work in this community and be proud of where they're from. For the past 3 years, I have been part of the executive board for Wisconsin Rapids Youth Sports Association. I am currently the vice president of the organization, where we have worked diligently as a board to continue to make the organization a great place for the youth of our area. I'm a graduate of the Community Leadership Program through the Heart of Wisconsin, and I have co-chaired the Cranberry Blossom Festival. I am also on I was appointed to the Park and Rec Commission this past year, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Dean.
Thank you, Carolyn. My name is Dean Veneman, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for hosting this forum. I'd also like to thank Vern and Carolyn for the willingness to serve. It's a big commitment. I applaud you for stepping up. I was born and raised in Port Edwards, and after working in Colorado, California, and Madison for 25 years, I returned to the Wisconsin Rapids, where Holly and I live on the west side. We have 5 adult children and 4 grandsons, all boys, with another, hopefully a girl, on the way, due in July. This is my first venture into public office, and while I may not have experience in government, I do have experience in getting things done. I've been a small business owner for over 15 years, and I'm the immediate past president of the Sunrise Rotary Club. Recently, in fact, I directed a team of Rotarians and community leaders to secure a $10,000 grant for the Community Outdoor Learning Center at Meade School, which will be of great benefit to the children of District 2. I'm running for office because I have a great passion for this community and some of the exciting projects that are happening here, particularly the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club, Metallico, the ND paper expansion, as well as the downtown renovation and the aquatic center. It's imperative that we capitalize on these economic opportunities because it's imperative that we attract and retain young people to our community. Attracting and retaining young people means we have to be a family-friendly community, so the safety of the children in District 2 is my top priority. I intend to forge relationships with law enforcement, healthcare providers, and social workers to do my part to help curtail the opiate and meth crisis in our neighborhoods. It's my hope that the children that are born here and raised here stay here, and that those who move here learn to love the area as much as I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veneman. Vernon, you're next.
My campaign is built on experience and leadership. And I believe experience counts. To elaborate this, I would like to take you back to when I was in the military and first started out in life. I was fortunate to attain rank fast and soon became a leader and supervisor. I was taught a leader sets an example for others to follow. I believe that to be true. Upon discharge and return to civilian life, I became a common laborer in the city street department. However, within 6 months, a grader operator position became available, and I was assigned to operate grader for about the next 6.5 years. In 1966, the street superintendent retired, and my skills, work record, and knowledge gained during my 6.5 years, plus being young, proved to be sufficient to be awarded the position by the city council. We had a crash program at this time of separating combination sewers in the city to avoid basement flooding. And I had a total of 83 employees working for me. In 1972, the position of operations director became vacant, and I applied for it and was successful. Now I was in charge of the wastewater treatment plant, street department, sign department, park department, solid waste disposal, maintenance of all city buildings, with the additional duty of administrator for the Alexander Field.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. We'll start the first question with you, Dean, and that is, what would you do to help Wisconsin Rapids businesses?
As a small businessman myself, I understand some of the barriers that we can find in this town and in business in general. So in the previous session, I actually liked what Shane had said about a business development coordinator in the city. He had said that in the previous forum, and that would seem like a good opportunity for us to do that. Yet, we need to do our own to develop business rather than rely on a tech-supported position. So I would reach out to businesses and try to coordinate their issues directly to the remainder of the older people. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Vern?
Well, I think one of the problems we have in the city is that we don't have real good paying jobs. People don't have the money to spend these days on the necessities of life. They buy just what's necessary and that's it. I think we have some good merchants in town. I think it's important that the people that work there are courteous, helpful. I know that I've had comments come to me that people have entered businesses and they've had to wait for someone to help them or locate the things that they were looking for. I just think that we've got people here that are good people, are good workers, and we have to try to get better wages for them and their families.
Thank you very much. Carolyn?
I think by helping, part of what Vernon said, that there's a lot of people that work in the city who have lower paying jobs. But I think if, the city continues to work on bringing more businesses into the area that have the ability to pay higher wages, then that I think will benefit everybody in the community, including the small business owners.
Thank you, Carolyn. Mr. Virginski, we'll start with you on the next question. What would you be interested in cutting out of the budget to lower taxes?
What was that?
What would you be willing to cut out of the budget to lower taxes?
Well, I think we've entered into some projects that have wasted money. I think that we've got projects that are unnecessary. I think that we're pushing too much special assessments on the property owners. Just as an example, I'm upset at the present time with the special assessments that are being charged people in the city for sidewalk, curb and gutter, paving, and things like that. They can't afford it. There are widows in the city that are trying to stay in their own homes, and they can't because they are charged too much for the services that the city is providing. I think this has got to be changed. I think we have got to change our ordinances and help the people. They pay our wages, and we should be representing them. And I don't think we're doing that good of a job.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. Carolyn?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What would you be interested in cutting out of the budget in order to lower taxes?
I think that's kind of a tough question. There are probably several things that could easily be, and depending on who you're asking, but I think in the majority, I think it's what you should be asking we should be asking our community or our our area and district to see what they believe or what their concerns are for the city and bring that forward.
Thank you, Carolyn. Dean Veneman.
Yeah, I actually agree with what Carolyn was just saying. As not having experience in government at this point, I'm not privy to the entire budget as we speak. However, I know there are certain things that I'm passionate about in the area I live, and there's certain things that I may not be passionate about. But it would be important to me to find out what the district, what the constituents from District 2 are passionate about, which is why I'm going door to door and asking them until between now and February 18th and finding out that exact issue. I do know that with the debt that we seem to be incurring with the some of the borrowing, what was just discussed before regarding the aquatic center and the riverfront, it might be hard to cut taxes at this point for that, with because we do have to cover the borrowing that we've made. So that is a pretty tough one to address at this point without having privy to the budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. We will start with you, Carolyn, on this question. What do you think are the two biggest challenges facing the city?
I think one of them is bringing businesses into the city, bringing more economies so that we have more jobs. And I think that's actually a two-part, that could be both parts of that answer, is not enough higher paying jobs or people that are getting paid more than minimum wage so that they can help live in this community and sustain the other businesses and small businesses and stuff throughout the city.
Thank you, Carolyn. Dean Veneman.
Could you repeat it? What was the two biggest problems you said?
Yeah, what do you think are the two biggest challenges that the city faces?
I think the number one challenge that the city faces is the meth and opioid crisis that we're dealing with in pretty much all areas of the city. I think that we have, we're utilizing our police resources and our healthcare and treatment resources to the max to take care of that. So I think that right now that would be the biggest challenge in the city. We have a serious problem with drugs in this city, and we need to do something about it. What we can do is make awareness and things of that nature, but it is going to be a challenge, and that's what I'm most passionate about in this. And I do think bringing and retaining and the people or bringing more business to the city would help, but I think the second biggest challenge is retaining the younger people to stay in the city. I think that we have some great projects coming on, like the Aquatic Center and the Boys and Girls Club, a couple new, like I said, Metalco and ND Paper, on downtown river, the downtown projects, renovations. So there are a lot of great things happening, but we have to maintain those. And the budget to maintain those is going to be a big challenge. But but basically, bringing people to this city, having them stay here is the main thing. Right now, there's a lot of and neighboring cities such as Stevens Point have quite a few things to offer that we don't, but I think some of these new projects that are coming on board are going to be great and are going to help people. So I think retaining young people is a big challenge. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. Vern Virginski, same question.
Well, one challenge I think we have, or one item that is sort of in my craw, is we've been borrowing money year after year since 2008. It isn't that we can't borrow more money. We can borrow more money. It's the fact that we can't pay it back. That's our problem. Right now, we're about $28 million in debt. When I first became mayor, back in 1994, the city was $18 million in debt. And out of every $10 that we took in, over $4 went to principal and interest. You can't operate a city that way. I'm not in favor of the money that we're spending on the swimming pool. I know back in 2001, we could have built a zero-entry pool on city-owned property for $3 million. And that pool would have had all the amenities. Now the pool is up to $9 million. It's supposed to be an area-wide pool, which I don't think it's going to attract the people that we think it's going to attract. Marshfield's going to build an area-wide swimming pool. Pretty soon Point will build a pool. And so we're spending all this money, and I don't think we're going to be taking in as much money as we think we will to maintain it. We're starting too many jobs and not finishing them. We should start a job and finish it before we move on to the second job.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. Dean Veneman, next question goes to you. How would you describe your leadership style?
Well, I like to have fun. I'm the immediate past president of the Sunrise Rotary Club, and we start at 7 in the morning, so you got to get everybody up. So I like to be engaging. I've managed businesses and managed opportunities and businesses in the corporate world, and I've owned my own business, and I've been a leader for quite some time. And the most important thing in leadership is to listen, no question about it. I like to listen to what people say, and in this case, if I was fortunate enough to be elected to this, to lead in this aldermanic position, I would, the most important thing would be to listen to the people in this district and to what they're concerning. Basically, the question was just asked a minute ago, what the biggest challenges are, and address what they think the biggest challenges are. I have been, it seems like I have been able to, over the course of my career, have been able to lead in a way that I have had some pretty good following. This last grant that I mentioned that we obtained for the Community Outdoor Learning Center at Meade School, I put together a team, and we secured a grant from a couple of different organizations and put together, we started with a $2,000 input, and we got matching grants and ended up with $10,000 going to that project. And actually, looks like we're going to be getting some more on another part. And I feel that my leadership had a lot to do with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. Same question, Mr. Virginski. What do you consider is your leadership style?
As I said before, I've got a lot of experience in operating a city government, but my style has always been to get out and talk to the workers, see what they're doing, encouraging them, telling them that what we should be doing as city employees, we should be trying to do the job faster, easier, better, and cheaper. We're representing the taxpayers out there. We should be working for them. And over the years, I've done that. I'm not a 8-hour-a-day office worker. I was out with the employees, seeing what they were doing and seeing if we could do the job better. That was my style.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. Carolyn.
I think I'd have to say my leadership style is organized. And I guess I'd also have to say hands-on. With my experience, my past experience of working, I want to say with Brysa, I'm very involved, and I always have to remember to keep reminding the rest, or keep your goal, whatever your main goal is, you have to remember that as you move forward with projects or different things that you're doing throughout, the whole process. So as long as you remember that you need to stay focused on your goal, keep everybody involved, and all work as a team, I think that's helps make the person, the leader, as you want to call it, what makes them successful in their position.
Thank you, Carolyn. Vern, we'll start with you on this question. What would you do to improve the transportation system and infrastructure in our city?
Well, to improve transportation?
System, both transportation and infrastructure, yes.
Well, one thing, patch all the holes in the streets. No, I think we have to look at that. I know I drive a lot of the streets in the city, and I've seen holes and potholes in the streets that have been there for 3 months. And I'm not blaming the employees. I think that we don't have enough men in some of the areas of the city, the departments in the city, to do the job. To maintain good streets is number one priority, I think. And we can prolong the life of a street by seal coating it, chip seals. We don't have to wait until they're completely destroyed before we replace them or try to maintain them. I think we have to have a good maintenance program year after year. This year, because of the storm, we weren't able to put as much money into street maintenance as we should have. So we should increase that this coming year in 2020. That's about it.
Thank you, Vern. Carolyn?
I agree with what Vern said about the manpower for all of the projects that need to be completed in the city. If you look at, how large the city is, and with all the projects that go on, there's no way they can continue to maintain or keep up with all of the roads that need to be repaired every year. So I guess it needs to be prioritized as to which ones need to be done first and which ones can wait or be prolonged for another year.
Thank you, Carolyn. Dean?
Well, first, I think I'm gonna go with Vern and help him fill the holes up, because that's a mess. We just all get together, 3 of us, all get in the car and ride around. That'd be awesome. I think that's what I agree with you. It's interesting because we're trying to talk about the budget being cutting taxes, yet we're also talking about not having enough people on the road crew. So that is definitely one of the challenges that we have. The transportation issue is definitely a problem in this town, and in terms of the road maintenance. Another issue is, obviously we talk about this all the time, is the train delays and how we can address that. And one of the things I'd like to do would be to sit down with the first responders and police and fire and ambulance and find out, in all honesty, how many times are we affected? How do we go about finding out how that's affected? If I'm wondering when finally when a train is holds up an ambulance and somebody passes away, when the first time that happens, then what are we going to do? Will we change anything? And so I know that's a big issue. It goes all the way to federal level, and I've talked to all kinds of people about it as I've considered this office, and that seems to be one of the biggest issues that people are concerned with. Yet it's also one of the hardest ones to find a solution for. So that's something I would spend a lot of my time working on, is trying to find a solution for that area.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. Carolyn, we'll start with you on this question. What plans do you have to improve, or how would you improve services for senior citizens and people with disabilities, in particular the parking at Centralia and the Lowell Center?
Well, I guess that's something that would need to be addressed as far as making sure that the parking lots are maintained, making sure that you have proper signage as to the handicap accessible areas, and that it's being watched, and that you have people who should be parking in the areas and who shouldn't.
Very good. Thank you. Dean?
I'm actually not familiar with the process on the Lowell Center and the parking at this point. We do have the needs to, we do have a very high percentage of elderly people that need assistance in this town. There's no question about it. In terms of what level of disabilities there are in handling that with disabilities for that area, that's something I'm not an expert in at this point, but I would certainly be willing to learn more about it.
Thank you, Dean. Vern?
Well, I think Wisconsin Rapids is probably has more elderly and disabled people than the average community in the state. I would like to see, like the Lowell Center, the Senior Center, have a grocery outlet closer to where they actually live. I think the Meals on Wheels is a very good program, especially for people that are living alone, widows or widowers. Trying to stay in their homes is difficult for the seniors, and they need transportation. Transportation is important for them. And it's not always available as they need it. As far as recreation, I think the Senior Center provides that for them, but it's a matter of getting them down there and getting them home again, furnishing transportation for them. I'd like to help the seniors more. I think they've got a difficult time at this time in their life, trying to stay in their home, pay all their expenses. I don't think apartment houses are the answer for them.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. Dean Veneman, we'll start with you on this question. What would you do to engage the public to be more involved in city government?
That's a good question. Well, actually, what I do for a living is I'm in marketing and promotion, so I would reach out to people. One of the things I think that would be that we need in our neighborhoods are neighborhood watches. We actually, Holly and I and our neighbors, we actually have what we call a neighborhood meeting. We get together and we sit out on the lawn in the warmer months, and about every other Wednesday with all the neighbors, and have a beer or a pop and sit around and watch the neighborhood. And we do talk about the local issues and especially some of the problems that are in the neighborhood. So we try to get people involved, and I think that some of the new ways to reach out to people through social media and get them involved is a good way to do it. Door to door is so far what I'm doing it myself in terms of getting people involved, and rather than knocking on the door and telling people why I'm running, I'm knocking on the door and introducing myself and asking them what they're looking for. And that's pretty much what I talk about in the previous question on leadership, finding out what people are interested in, helping them reach out to the proper levels and get that message across to the remainder of the council and to the mayor.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. Vern, you're next on this question. What would you do to engage public to be involved in city government?
In city government, I think at this point, we've got some programs in the city that could be expanded on for the seniors, but that's a difficult situation. Some of them are handicapped, some of them aren't handicapped, and to try to benefit all of them is a difficult situation. I think the Lowell Center, what we provided there was great. Theaters might be a possibility for them. Farmers market, we've got to expand on that, I think, during the summer months. And I don't think having that farmers market on 2nd Street is the answer. I think getting them involved in something like that, a neighborhood garden or something like that, would be interesting for some of the seniors. Other than that, I don't know of anything right now.
Thank you, Vern Virginski. Carolyn.
I think you have several options or opportunities to get people involved. Like Dean had mentioned, going door to door, meeting people, and people want to talk about their concerns or their ideas or their frustrations. And my answer to a lot of them is, we can do so much. We could all take an opportunity to bring it to a meeting, but if you really have a big concern and want to be involved, come to a meeting. Go to a city council meeting, watch them on TV. If you have a bigger concern, go to a meeting and talk about it. So you can do that through phone calls, door to door, social media. There's a lot of ways to reach people.
Thank you, Carolyn. This will be our last question before we go to concluding remarks. The question is, what needs do you think are going unmet in this city that should be addressed? We'll start with you, Mr. Virginski.
What
needs of people? What do people need that you think that's not being met in our city?
Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. What needs are going unmet that should be addressed in our city? What do people need?
What people need to be addressed?
Sure.
In the city? Are you talking about one age group or all the general public?
I'm not the author of the question, so I would think it's up to you to take the question where you want to go with it.
Okay. Well, I think we got plenty of housing, apartment houses in the city. I don't think that has to be addressed. I think trying to keep the elderly people in their homes, we got to do a better job of that. I think that we've got to provide other activities. Maybe it's quilting clubs or something like that for some of the elderly, or garden clubs. We've got to get them active instead of staying in the home and watching TV. They've got to be walking or exercising or communicating with other adults. Maybe it's some classes or education that helps them get involved in the community. I think that as far as the city is concerned and what we've got available, like the river walk along the east and the west side of the river, that's important to get them out again. Other than that, I think there isn't too much that we can do to add to what we've got.
Thank you very much. Carolyn?
I think one of the needs, I think, is kind of a hidden thing, but it is in existence in Wisconsin Rapids as our homelessness. I think there needs to be more of an awareness of that in our community, and I think more of an effort needs to be made to help them and assist them and to be able to help them get back on their feet. If there's other issues in the area with or reasons why they are homeless, we just need to make it more of an issue that people need to know about and be willing to help with.
Thank you, Carolyn. Dean Veneman?
I think one of the biggest needs in the city is inadequate treatment facilities and opportunities for drug addicted and alcoholic issues. I've talked with quite a few social providers and law enforcement as well as healthcare as of late as I've been on this journey. And I'm finding that there's quite often people are trying to get into facilities, and it isn't even a financial, it isn't even if they can't pay it. There aren't enough treatment opportunities in this town. There aren't enough in this area. And with the drug problem we do have, it's a problem that must be met. So how we address that is something that's going to be one of those challenges we've talked about. I think one of the biggest needs that is actually being addressed is, and it's pretty exciting, is what's going to be addressed by the addition of the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. This is a great opportunity for this city. It's amazing for a town this size to have a facility like that it's going to be. I'm really excited about it. And what that can provide are needs that have not been met for quite some time, with especially with the limited resources that the previous Boys and Girls Club had, and what they're going to be able to do now is astounding. And I just think it's exciting, and it's a project that was done by the private sector, which is the best part of all. So, thanks.
Thank you, Dean Veneman. Vernon Virginski.
Closing statement?
Closing statements, correct.
Okay. Over the years, I've been elected or appointed to fill a number of positions in the city. I was street superintendent from 1966 to 1972, city operations director from 1972 to 1990, city alderman, the 5th Ward from 1991 to 1993, county board member for District 25 from 1992 to 1994, Wisconsin Rapids mayor from 1994 to 2002, airport administrator from 1992 to 1990, and now since October of 2019 to the present, I've been alderman for District Number 2. I also received the American Hometown Leadership Award in 1998 and traveled to Washington, D.C. to receive the award. And I served on the Wisconsin State Roads and Streets Council from 1999 to 2002. I have a working knowledge of every department in the city, being involved in their manning requirements, budgets, policy decisions, work performance, and service to the community. We have made changes where changes were due, and I have made an effort to impress upon our employees, our administrative supervisor, and our hourly people that we work for the people, and our job is to provide service demanded by the taxpayers better, easier, faster, and cheaper. I'm really concerned at this point about our sewer maintenance program. I know that there was a policy adopted by the council that they should be cleaned every 3 years. That's not realistic, but they should be a bit better maintained.
Thank you, Mr. Virginski. Carolyn?
I believe I have more to offer. That is why I'm still looking into, or this is why I'm pursuing this position. I'm also looking to bring a new perspective and some diversity to the city council. I feel I'm a good representative of what this community and district is. It's a working class family calling the city our home. Because of this, I believe I am in tune with the needs of what our community and district is looking for. And I also wanted to say thank you for everybody for this opportunity this evening and for taking time out to spend it with us.
Dean Veneman?
First of all, thank you for all who attended, and thanks for the great questions. As I mentioned in the opening, I know how to get things done. We are living in an entirely new economy than we were when I was growing up. The paper industry has completely changed directions, and in many ways not for the better. If we don't adapt to change, we're going to be left behind. I know how to adapt. I've been involved in 2 corporate takeovers, including the Georgia Pacific takeover in the 90s. Both resulted in business closures and job loss. The city needs to be run like a small business. Small business owners are fully vested in their business. We need to be fully vested in our city. Just like a small business, we need to take full advantage of the resources we already have in order to attract new opportunities. In the coming months, we will have 2 major projects coming to fruition in our area that will change the entire dynamic of our community, and we need to capitalize on these opportunities. We have the foundation. We need to build a new economy from within. As I mentioned earlier, children's safety is my top priority. Recently, across the street from my house, in my neighbor's front yard, one of my dearest friends almost stepped on a hypodermic needle in her bare feet. They have small children at home, and their yard is a half a block from the Rapids Middle School. I almost said West Middle School. We've heard all kinds of stories, and we're always shocked that it happens here. It's time to no longer be shocked. We need to be aware of our surroundings, watch our neighbors' houses when they're not home, and form neighborhood watch groups. It's up to us. When I grew up, due to pollution, you couldn't fish in the river. Now we swim and paddle in it. It's our greatest resource. It's an amazing what can be changed when great citizens put their mind to it. On Tuesday, February 18th, I'd be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our candidate forum for the February 18th primary election. Thank you to our candidates Carolyn, Dean, and Vern for being willing to run for public office. Thanks to our staff at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for providing us coverage of tonight's forum. And also a big thanks to our volunteers from the League of Women Voters. A reminder to everyone in our viewing audience, our studio audience, it is so important that you get out and vote February 18th in the primary election. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice work.
Now you need a photo ID to vote. Most people already have one, If you don't, you can get a Wisconsin state ID for free at the Division of Motor Vehicles. There are just a few documents you'll need to bring, like a certified birth certificate, utility bill, and social security card. Need help? The DMV can help you figure out which documents you need. They can even track down your birth certificate. To learn more, visit bringit.wisconsin.gov and
Bring it. Bring it.
Bring it.
Bring it to the ballot.
Bring it to the ballot.
bring it to the ballot.